right, so we are ready to get introduced to our set 9 for vocabulary. This video is just going over the words a little bit, talking about them, giving you some examples. You're always welcome to use this video to study. You can also use Quizlet, so that's where I've got these cards from. And you can use anything on Quizlet. You can use the quizzes that is in the module for this week. You can make your own flashcards if you wanted to on paper, if that helps you, whatever makes the most sense. But this video is just kind of the introduction to these words. So the first word is absurd, which I love that word. Absurd just means so unreasonable, it's laughable. So like foolish, silly. So if somebody said, well, I think tomorrow, you know what, I'm just going to grow some wings and fly to school. That's absolutely absurd, right? It's so unreasonable. It doesn't make sense. It's so out there and crazy that it's almost laughable in this way. So it's very foolish, very silly. I'm sure you've either come up with some things that might be absurd, especially maybe little kids will say things that sound a little bit absurd to us too. And don't get me wrong, adults do too, but just absurd, just really silly. Accomplish. Accomplish means to, by making an effort that you do something successfully. So maybe you accomplished getting better grades this year. Maybe you accomplished a new level of gymnastics. Maybe you accomplished a new level in the video game that you're working on. Maybe you've accomplished getting down how to specifically draw something that you had been working on for a long time. So it's just putting effort forth and being able to successfully complete that. And I'm sure we've probably heard the word accomplish, or at least accomplishments, several times. Ascend. So ascend is really similar to another word that we're going to talk about this week, but ascend means to rise, usually in a steady way. So you could ascend a staircase, so you could walk up the stairs. And the big thing about ascending means that it's not you're not going in at lots of different speeds. So it's not like you're going slow, fast, right? You're normally going one speed up the stairs. Maybe you ascend in an elevator. So the elevator goes at a very steady pace up and down. But in this case, ascend means that you would just be going up in the elevator. An airplane ascends. It goes at a very steady rate, at a steady path. And keep that in mind. The steady part is going to be really important, like I said, with the word ascend. The next one is dense. So if something is dense, it could mean really tightly packed or crowded close together. It could mean something that's really hard, that's thick, that's hard to see through. If something is dense, so like it could be dense fog in the morning if it's really, really foggy out. Dense could also, it kind of talks about weight. So dense things tend not to float, they tend to sink because the atoms in an object, now we're getting sciencey, are super close together and tightly packed. It could also mean that you're not thinking very clearly. So if you're being dense, it might mean that you're being kind of hard-headed, not thinking through things very well. An experiment, we probably think of science when we hear the word experiment. So it's to test, to prove or discover something, to try out a new idea or activity. The science fair is this week. So a science experiment, right? We do lots of experiments. We do experiments whether we realize it or not, whether it's in a science form or not. It's just testing. Maybe it's in a video game. You're like, maybe I'll try out this new move. Maybe this will help. Or maybe I'll count to 3 before I make my next jump. Or maybe it's in baseball and you're trying out a new pitch, right? Those are all experiments. So we do experiments quite often. Flimsy. When something's flimsy, it means easily damaged or broken. It's not strongly made. So something very flimsy wouldn't be very stiff. Trying to think of something that might be flimsy. Like a wet piece of paper would be extremely flimsy, right? Very easily broken or damaged. It could also mean not believable. So if you have a flimsy story, it means that it's not a very strong story or a not very strong opinion, something that wouldn't be very believable. That's flimsy. Heroic. So if it's heroic, you're being very brave. You're showing a lot of courage, showing determination, requiring lots of effort. This could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. We all probably find different people in our lives heroic or our heroes. Obviously, you could think of, the normal ones, the firefighters, the police officers, the people in the military, even superheroes, right? That's why they've got the name hero right there in the word. But there are other people too that you might find heroic, or people that you look up to that are very brave and very strong. Maybe it's family, maybe it's friends, maybe it's a professional in their field, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a scientist, whether it's a writer, right? We could find lots of people heroic. Lumber can mean a couple of things. Lumber, when we normally think of it, means wood that's been sawed into boards. So whenever you go to those home supply stores, you might see lots of wooden boards that are put up. It can also mean to move in a clumsy way. So you can lumber from one end of the house to the other, or you move in a very heavy way, could mean lumber. Mimic means to copy or imitate closely. If you have little brothers and sisters, you probably see this a lot, or even, little cousins. Little kids love to imitate bigger kids because they want to be like them, right? Mimicking can also mean making fun by imitating. Unfortunately, I feel like probably all of us at some point have done this. You mimic their actions, their sounds, the way they speak, how they dress, right? It's just imitating somebody or looking or sounding like somebody else. Significant. It just means important. So if something's significant in your life, then it's an important thing in your life. That one's pretty cut and dry. Soar. This is the other one that I was talking about that's kind of close to ascend, but a little bit different. So this means to fly high in the sky, to rise suddenly and rapidly. So when we think of soaring, we normally think of birds. And the picture right here kind of does it justice. So we've got the bird that's, just kind of soaring on the wind. So ascending means that you're kind of going up at a steady rate. Soaring means that you're flying kind of back and forth. Your speed could change. In this case, it talks about rising suddenly and rapidly. So that would not be the same as ascent. They're not opposites. They're very close, but they are just a little bit different. So soaring, I think of they're already up in the sky and they're moving. Ascending means that they're moving up. It's when they're first starting to take off. Spectator. A spectator is a person who watches an activity. So if you go to a basketball game, you're the spectator. If you go to a movie, you're the spectator. It's just somebody that's an onlooker, somebody that's watching an activity being done. Suspend. So suspend has a lot of meaning. So it can mean to hang while attached to something. So like you could suspend streamers from the ceiling if you were at a birthday party. During Christmas, some of us suspended lights from different parts of our homes, right? It could also mean to stop for a while from what's going on. So maybe you suspend your time practicing on a certain skill, or the time that you're working on schoolwork is suspended until the next day when you go to bed. It also can mean that you're barring someone from working, attending, or taking a part for a while. So you could suspend somebody from being a part of your group, or you could suspend somebody, unfortunately, from school if they're making poor choices. Terminate. Terminate means to bring to an end. So you could terminate your game. You could terminate your book, right? Terminate just means to stop, to bring to an end. And then our last word is unwieldy. And that's hard to handle or control because of large size or heaviness. So if you had, I'm trying to think, maybe it's snowing today here. So maybe if you were making a snowman and you were rolling up the bottom part of the snowman, and then the bottom half of the snowman gets too big, that'd be really difficult to control if it started rolling, right? Or maybe like an elephant. I would imagine an elephant, I've never tried this, but I would imagine an elephant would be very difficult to control because it is very large, right? So anything that's hard to handle or control because of size. So I would suggest going through these on your own and reading through them again. You can always, again, rewatch this video. You might talk to somebody a little bit about these words because you might hear it explained in a different way than I just explained it. And sometimes that's helpful to hear different people's, the way that other people explain it. But other than that, you've got 2 weeks until we're going to take our quiz over this. So make sure that you study, study, study.